This property is being illegally occupied. That's the first thing this woman screamed in my face, marching onto my land like I was a criminal trespasser. She's waving papers, shouting fines, and declaring herself the president of some HOA. The catch? I bought this farmhouse precisely because it was outside of any HOA. I've got stacks of legal documents proving it, but she won't listen. She just gets louder, more aggressive, more unhinged. And when I try showing her my paperwork, she absolutely loses it. I'm Marcus. I've been dreaming about this day for 3 years. Moving boxes scattered across the yard, September sun on my face, and finally, a home where nobody can tell me what color my mailbox should be or how tall my grass can grow. This 1,800 square foot farmhouse is my fortress of freedom. County records, title insurance, attorneys, even the original 1870s land grant all confirm this land is HOA-free. So when the stranger storms across my lawn, clipboard in one hand and a manila folder in the other, my first thought was maybe she's a friendly neighbor. But then, like she's serving a court order, she declares, "I'm Karen Mitchell, president of Maplewood Heights HOA. This property requires immediate compliance." Her tone? Practiced, rehearsed, like she's been waiting her whole life to give this speech. And she says it with such authority that for half a second, I almost doubt myself. But I spent months digging through records. There's no way she's right. I pull out my carefully prepared folder of document surveys, legal opinions, county confirmations going back a century. But instead of even glancing at them, Karen dismisses it all. Those records are outdated. I have current HOA maps. She waves her folder like it holds state secrets. But my engineer's eye catches the details. Mismatched fonts, blurry seals, colors that look off. They look more like props than legal documents. My wife Judy steps out, curious. Karen immediately pivots, trying the emotional manipulation angle. "Ma'am, surely you want to protect community property values." Judy ever. The sharp teacher studies the papers with her no-nonsense stare and says, "These look like copies. Where are the originals?" That's when Karen snaps. Her voice jumps 3 octaves. Illegal questioning of HOA authority. She hurls the word illegal around like confetti, but it's clear she doesn't even know what it means. Real authority welcomes verification, fake authority panics when you ask for proof. I suggest we call the county office together, settle it in 5 minutes flat. But Karen doubles down. HOA authority supersedes county records. She declares, like the neighborhood book club outranking the city council. Finally, with all the drama of a bad courtroom TV show, she storms off muttering illegal, illegal under her breath. And that's when fate hands me the twist. In her fury, she drops a receipt from a print shop, dated yesterday. For custom HOA boundary maps, $87.50. Right there in my hands. Proof that she fabricated her own authority overnight. And suddenly, it all makes sense. That print shop receipt stays in my head all night. At first, it feels like a small thing, vague wording, an odd time stamp. But the more I stare at it, the more I sense a pattern that goes beyond my own gate. If Karen made up authority for my farmhouse, what else is she inventing? If you've ever run into somebody who pretended to be in charge, drop a comment. Trust me, you'll want to hear what I uncovered. I'm an engineer. I don't do drama. I gather proof. While Judy fusses with the coffee and tries not to look worried, I start collecting data. My first call is the obvious one, the Maplewood Heights HOA office. If Karen is really their president, this will be quick to confirm. The woman who answers sounds competent, the kind of person who takes pride in accurate records. I ask the simple question, "Is Karen Mitchell on your board?" There's a long pause, then the dam breaks. "No," she says. "We don't have anyone by that name." Our president is David Chun. Board roster is public on our website. 2 minutes later, an official email lands in my inbox with David Chun listed as president since 2021. It isn't the satisfying "I told you so" I imagined. It's colder. The realization that Karen lied about something basic and verifiable. If she invented being president, what else has she faked? How many neighbors has she fooled? So I do what any competent engineer with internet access would do. I run a background sweep. Karen's LinkedIn lists her as an assistant office manager at Hartley Insurance until 8 months ago. Her posts about community standards kick up roughly 6 months ago, right when someone out of work might need money. Before that, it was vacations and family photos. Then suddenly it becomes a one-track obsession with compliance and property values. Digging deeper turns up a disturbing pattern. Over the last 6 months, she's filed 47 complaints across neighborhood platforms, almost 2 a week. Every gripe targets small, fixable things: mailbox colors, lawn ornaments, fence heights, seasonal decorations. Every complaint reads like it was written to hold up in court: specific regulation numbers, timestamps, photos. Whoever compiled these complaints knew how to make them look official. The financial trail is the real dagger. Payments to Karen show up on local payment platforms. Neighbors sending $50, $75 labeled as HOA fines. Mailbox penalty, garden violation, correction fee. Small amounts. Sure, but paid repeatedly, sometimes multiple times a week. It adds up. People who can't afford a surprise bill are quietly handing her cash to avoid trouble. That's when Bob Wilson finds me on his evening walk. Bob's retired military, the kind of man who doesn't tolerate nonsense. He shows relief and a little anger when he realizes I've seen through Karen. "You met our neighborhood scammer?" he says. "Half the block knew something was off. They just didn't want the mess." He scrolls the neighborhood chat. Mrs. Peterson paid $40 for a garden gnome violation. Mrs. Smith coughed up $60 for a crooked mailbox. My own mother, in her 70s, paid $80 for excess holiday decor. Before anyone realized the HOA authority wasn't even real. The pattern is undeniable. Karen hunts for new residents, documents trivial infractions, and quietly collects money. These aren't passive complaints from a busybody. They're a coordinated operation designed to extract cash and intimidate people who don't know the history. Once you spot the trail of payments and the frequency of the filings, it's clear this is organized fraud masquerading as civic duty. The neighborhood group chat exposed something darker. Early posts were petty, small fines for little things, but the more recent threads read like threats: legal action, property liens, forced compliance. This wasn't just pocketing cash. It was intimidation to make people bend. One message from last month chilled me. Karen told the Oak Street seniors they'd face foreclosure unless they paid their accumulated violations. They scraped together $300 to avoid losing the house. $300 from elderly folks on fixed incomes, paid to a pretend authority. At dawn, I drove to Print Palace clutching that receipt, hoping for answers. The clerk behind the counter recognized the order instantly. "Oh yeah, she's a regular," he said. "She's been ordering official-looking materials monthly. Very specific about logos and seals, always wanting heavyweight paper, lamination, and color matching so stamps look real." He pulled up her history, and the pattern was worse than I feared. Not just updated boundary maps, but whole bureaucracies, violation notices, fine schedules, compliance forms, threat templates, even fake letterheads for imaginary committees. 200 to 300 pieces a month for half a year. 6 months of printed paperwork, 6 months of complaints, 6 months of people quietly paying. The clerk's casual admiration made my blood boil. He thought she was dedicated to community standards, not realizing he'd been enabling fraud. Karen had the look, the language, and enough DIY knowledge to convince most homeowners. Most people would rather pay a small fine than dig into legitimacy. It was a cold, efficient con. Exploit trust in authority. Use polished documents to scare people and collect repeated small payments that add up. That night Karen called. The tone was urgent and practiced. Final warning. Submit $200 compliance fee and architectural review forms within 24 hours or face enforcement. Demand was built to force quick compliance, to short-circuit thought. After I hung up, I checked the caller ID. The number belonged to Hartley Insurance's collections department. It connected directly to Karen's recent employment, a years-long career spent pushing people to pay. Suddenly it made sense. Someone trained to extract money through pressure had lost their job and created their own fake authority to keep the cash flowing. If I was going to bring this down, I needed airtight documentation, things that would hold up for police or in court. So the next morning I set up a security camera aimed at public spaces only, the street, the sidewalk, the front of my property. I wasn't invading anyone's private life, but if Karen conducted HOA business in public, I would record it. Evidence beats suspicion. Judy thought I was going too far with the surveillance idea at first. But once I explained that this looked like organized fraud preying on vulnerable neighbors, she agreed to help. She'd been out of work for 8 months, Judy noted as she scrolled Karen's social feed. Her unemployment benefits ran out 3 months ago. Desperation fit the pattern, and if Karen's scheme was her income, it explained a lot. The first night of footage matched my worst suspicions and was somehow even more unnerving in motion. At around 11, Karen's home office lights came on. Through the open window facing the street, the camera captured a surprisingly professional printer and computer setup. She wasn't hiding the operation. From her point of view, she was simply doing HOA work, late because she took standards seriously. The video shows her staging violation scenarios, arranging props under a magnifying lamp, and assembling folders that were crafted to look like legitimate evidence packages for unsuspecting neighbors. This wasn't slapdash fakery. It was a carefully honed workflow, refined over months. Night 2 revealed the cash exchanges I'd suspected, and seeing one in real time made the theft feel painfully real. Mrs. Peterson, the sweet older woman fined for a garden gnome, approached Karen's porch around 7 p.m., envelope clutched tight. The handoff was short and businesslike. Karen produced official-looking papers while Mrs. Peterson counted out bills with trembling fingers. Watching Mrs. Peterson's posture, apologetic, flinching, constantly saying "yes, ma'am," made my stomach drop. This wasn't someone paying a lawful penalty. It was a frightened neighbor being extorted by a con artist using faux authority and the weight of formal-looking documents. Night 3, the scale of Karen's operation became undeniable. She'd set up a laminating station on her patio, a heavy-duty laminator, an industrial cutter, a high-end color printer, even a device to emboss or apply raised seals. The notices she produced had the tactile quality of government forms, heavy stock, waterproof lamination, color-matched seals, even holographic-like stickers that caught the light. She cranked out stack after stack, inspecting each under bright lamps and sorting them by neighborhood and violation type. This was document production with inventory control and quality checks, not a hobbyist project. The equipment alone suggested she'd invested thousands, which only made sense if she'd been taking in significant sums. The clincher came on day 4. The camera recorded Karen walking to my mailbox, entirely within public view, carrying a printed violation and a folder. She slipped the notice into the box, stepped back, and then photographed it, carefully angling the shot to include both the house number and the notice text. She checked each image, retook angles, adjusted lighting, and even removed and reshot the scene from different perspectives, apparently to document the very evidence she'd just planted. That wasn't just fraud. It was premeditated evidence fabrication, producing and documenting false grounds to justify future claims. Watching her methodically build multi-layered case files made it clear this was a practice system, not a one-off scheme. She even seems to manufacture timestamps by including her phone screen in some shots, creating the illusion of time and date proof for her phony violations. With that footage in hand, I set a trap designed to reveal the full scale of Karen's fabricated authority while letting her lie herself into a corner. That night when she called with another so-called compliance deadline, I changed my approach from confrontational to cooperative. "Karen," I said, "I've thought about our talk. I'm open to discussing compliance, but I need the full packet. Board minutes showing approval of my specific violation." The shift in my tone clearly throws her. I stop arguing and treat her like an actual official, requesting the routine records any real HOA would provide. "Excellent," she breathes, relief audible. "I'll prepare a comprehensive HOA packet for your review." The next morning she arrives at my door as if she's delivering a binder to corporate counsel, wheeled briefcase, dark suit, carefully chosen jewelry, the whole intimidating presentation. "I have full HOA records, 3 years of violations and enforcement," she announces, spreading papers across my kitchen like evidence she expects to win the day. The act is polished enough to convince someone who doesn't know better. Her false dossier is an expertly constructed fraud, forged meeting minutes bearing her name as president, invented board members, architectural standards citing plausible-sounding regulation numbers, and a tiered fine schedule from $50 to $500 with escalation steps for known compliance. There are fake neighbor complaint letters too, complete with phony signatures and addresses. She's fabricated meetings that never took place, site rules that don't exist, and seals she clearly designed herself using professional tools. Taken at face value, it looks airtight. What's especially alarming is how convincing the whole package is. A person who doesn't dig deeper would accept it as legitimate proof of HOA power. The phone minutes are detailed, votes supposedly targeting my property, budget allocations for enforcement monitoring, and minutes that narrate repeated board discussions about my violations, architectural guidelines read with professional polish, site measurements, material rules, and appeal procedures. Even the fine schedule includes legalese and appeals language that mirror real HOA docs. Either she studied actual HOA governance closely, or she'd worked inside one long enough to replicate its trappings. This is where my engineer brain kicks in. I ask verification questions a real HOA could answer easily, but a fake one cannot. Those minutes show votes on my case. Can you give contact info for the other board members so I can confirm how the decision was made? Karen's composure crumbles into evasiveness. Board contact info is confidential, she snaps, as if sharing a simple name were tantamount to leaking state secrets. I press on. Where are the public financial records showing where fines are deposited? Another dodge. Internal financial matters. You're illegally demanding confidential information. There it is again. Illegal. Every time. I corner her with a reasonable verification request. She throws up the same legal-sounding shield. It's the pattern I expected. Phony authority blusters and intimidates because it can't survive basic scrutiny. Legitimate organizations answer these questions. Charlatans panic. Real HOA. Presidents welcome verification. They have nothing to hide and legitimate paperwork to back their claims. Fraudsters, though, get defensive the moment anyone asks for proof because verification exposes the scam. Watching Karen gather her staged documents, twitchy and overprepared, I start to suspect this confrontation might be exactly what she planned. I lay my card on the table. Karen, I have video of you manufacturing these documents and planting false violation notices. Her reply is instant and rehearsed, as if she's been practicing this moment. Illegal surveillance. Illegal harassment. I'm calling the police. She storms to her car and dials 911 with the kind of righteous fury that proves she truly believes her own story. Still, as the distant sirens grow louder, a cold thought creeps in. Her reaction was almost too polished, too ready. Could this have been set up to flip the script on me? 2 hours crawl by, the usual wait for non-emergency response, and I use the time to organize everything. I assemble deed records, survey maps, 3 attorneys' opinions, the surveillance clips of Karen fabricating evidence and planting notices, plus screenshots of her collection payments from neighbors, all annotated with timestamps. Judy helps me build a clear timeline showing how her scheme evolved. Seeing the facts laid out chronologically makes the fraud scope hit even harder. When Officer Walker and Officer Stone finally arrive, I hand them a tight, professional case file that should make their job straightforward. But Karen's performance for law enforcement blindsides me. She meets the officers like a corporate briefing, wheeled briefcase, perfectly curated outrage, a polished delivery that makes the initial reaction from both officers look sympathetic. Officers, I'm Karen Mitchell, president of Maplewood Heights HOA. This property is illegally occupied and this resident has been conducting unlawful surveillance of HOA officials, she says, handing over a folder packed with her glossy materials. Her presentation could sway a listener were it not for the footage I have. Officer Walker listens to both sides with the neutral, cautious approach you see in trained cops. He reads Karen's folder and hears a confident person claiming authority. Then he inspects my documents that trace clear boundary lines back generations. I walk them through my packet, deed with century-old boundary descriptions, survey maps showing the farmhouse outside any HOA limits, legal opinions from 3 independent attorneys confirming no HOA jurisdiction, and most crucially, the video showing Karen staging evidence and planting violation notices. Watching the footage is the turning point. I can see the moment the officers' expressions change from neighbor dispute to possible criminal conduct. Officer Stone watches, silent at first, then more intent as the clip shows Karen slipping a fake notice into my mailbox, photographing it for proof and arranging staged close-ups. The weight of the visual record shifts the investigation. This is no petty HOA fight. It's deliberate fabrication and evidence manipulation. Watch the officer's face shift from professional doubt to real alarm as he took in what the footage showed. It was unmistakable. The complainant manufacturing evidence. He pointed out the timestamps and camera angles, scribbling notes about the staged nature of her documentation. Officer Walker then examined Karen's packet more closely and started flagging inconsistencies, mismatched fonts, poor seal quality, awkward legal phrasing, all signs of amateur forgery, not official paperwork. The gap between my verified legal records and Karen's manufactured materials became obvious, even to someone without specialized training in document authentication. Instead of folding, Karen doubled down, growing increasingly erratic and making grand, irrational claims that only exposed how deep her delusion ran. Officer Stone rang the real Maplewood Heights HOA. When the rep confirmed Karen had never been affiliated with them, she erupted into wild accusations about conspiracies, sounding detached from reality. "Ma'am, the HOA confirms you're not on their roster," he said calmly, giving her a chance to step back. "No. The HOA is corrupt," she shot back, waving her papers like they were sacred writ. "They're denying my presidential authority. I have legal proof." She thrust another page forward, a police report supposedly documenting my illegal surveillance. The officers checked the system. The case number didn't exist. The formatting didn't match department standards. The language read like a script from a bad legal drama. "Did you file this with us?" Officer Walker asked, carefully, as you would with someone who might snap. Her answer only confirmed the collapse of the story she'd built. Paranoid accusations about systemic conspiracies and illegal actions by officials. Watching her fracture was like observing a complex system fail, one broken assumption after another collapsing into chaos. Every attempt to fact-check was met with more outlandish claims: police corruption, fabricated conspiracies, and a refusal to accept any evidence that contradicted her narrative. Still, the officers methodically pieced the case together. The video showed premeditated tampering and staged evidence. Multiple agencies verified she had no authority. Neighbors produced records of payments and complaints. My property deeds and attorney opinions were authentic and corroborated. Karen's papers were forgeries using amateur techniques. The pattern of deception was clear: organized fraud, not a simple neighbor dispute. Officer Stone warned her about the seriousness of filing false reports and impersonating officials, crimes that carry real consequences, and gave her one last chance to stop. But Karen reacted like every warning was further proof of a conspiracy against her, not the professional guidance it was. Her accusations grew more frantic and disconnected from the facts. The most unsettling part was realizing she truly believed her own fabrications. Whether it was a severe mental health issue or an inability to admit how deep she'd sunk into fraud, Karen wasn't negotiating. She was trapped in a self-made delusion. When Officer Stone gently suggested she consider counseling, she spun it into yet another conspiracy theory. By the time the officers left, their conclusion was firm. This was organized deception, not a misunderstanding, and further legal steps were warranted. Officer's warning echoed in my head as Karen's taillights vanished, reckless, furious, like someone untethered. Officer Walker pulled me aside before he left. "Record everything," he said. People this entrenched in a lie rarely stop on their own. They escalate until something forces them to. That line sat heavy with me all night. If Karen is clinging to this sham so desperately, what will she try next? 3 days later, my phone rang. "Mr. Marcus?" "David Chun from Maplewood Heights HOA," came the voice, measured, professional, the tone of someone who's handled fraud before. He explained that his board had filed an incident report about an impersonator using their name, and that residents had been paying fines to an unaffiliated individual. He wanted a public meeting to restore the HOA's reputation and to address the financial harm done to neighbors. There was genuine anger in his voice, not just about liability, but about a trusted civic structure being weaponized. David had already thought through the psychology at play. He told me calmly that people like Karen rarely back down quietly. Their identity is wrapped up in the fiction they've created, and a public forum gives them the irresistible chance to defend that fiction. In other words, she'd show up because she could not show up. Saturday came crisp and clear, the kind of afternoon that makes civic meetings feel oddly hopeful. The community room was set up formally, tables in a U, an official banner behind the head table, name placards for legitimate board members, and a sign-in sheet to document attendance. 8 households showed, those who'd been targeted and others curious to learn whether they'd been affected. The mood was tense but determined. People who'd suffered in private were finally meeting with real authority behind them. Karen arrived like she'd rehearsed the moment. Suit on, wheeled briefcase, a stack of papers, and a look like she planned to chair the meeting. She announced herself to the room with practiced fury. "I'm here to expose a conspiracy against legitimate HOA authority," she declared. Projecting the same commanding tone that had intimidated neighbors into paying up. David responded with quiet, methodical clarity, exactly what real authority looks like. He laid out verified documentation, state incorporation papers with authentic seals, a public roster with elected board members and photos, audited bank statements proving legitimate HOA accounts, 5 years of meeting minutes with votes and attendance records, and a current member directory. Each item was verifiable in public records and government databases. He explained, calmly, that Karen had no affiliation with Maplewood Heights. The contrast was devastating. David's stack of legitimate records sat beside Karen's crisp but fabricated packets, and the difference was obvious even to residents who'd never dealt with HOA governance before. Rather than concede, Karen attacked, illegal imposter, corrupt board. This is fraud against me. Her language grew frantic, repeating the same words she'd used before, illegal, conspiracy, as if repeating them could rewrite reality. Watching her double down revealed how trapped she was by the story she'd made for herself. Even with clear facts in front of her, she interpreted verification as persecution. Her accusations morphed into a litany of conspiracies, police collusion, HOA corruption, none of which held up to scrutiny. It was like watching a machine fail. One part breaks, then another, until the entire mechanism collapses under contradiction. David stayed calm and continued to present evidence. The officers who joined verified every claim. Karen's name was not on official rosters. Financial records showed payments to strangers rather than legitimate HOA accounts, and neighbors corroborated payments they'd made to Karen. The pattern was clear: manufactured violations, forged minutes, and a targeted campaign to, if you're watching this, hit subscribe to listen HOA stories and drop a comment. You won't want to miss how this ends. She waves her stack of phony paperwork like it's the Constitution itself. Those are forged documents. I'm the real president, she cries, insisting David's verified records are somehow less authentic than the homemade packets she's produced on a kitchen printer. From an engineer's point of view, it's a striking breakdown. Instead of rechecking her assumptions when shown contradictory facts, Karen concludes everyone else must be lying. She builds a closed loop of delusion that makes any logical conversation pointless, like watching someone insist gravity pushes up while everyone else clearly feels it pull down. The testimony hour turns into a catalog of theft. One by one, residents step forward and tell how she drained them. Mrs. Peterson speaks first, voice trembling but steady. She fined me $40 for a garden gnome and demanded payment or legal action. Mr. Miller follows, controlled fury in his words. $75 for mailbox height, she claimed it needed. Architectural approval. Bob Wilson recounts being charged $60 to repaint. Offense to some imaginary spec. Mrs. Foster closes the sequence with the largest hit. $1.85 for a supposed architectural violation that nearly pushed her into financial trouble. From this small group alone, the extorted money totals $260, and that's just what people were brave enough to declare in public. Each time a neighbor speaks, Karen's response is the same defensive litany: illegal fines, illegal testimony, you're refusing to pay. She treats plain-faced accounts of financial harm as proof of some conspiracy against her, not as evidence that she's been running a scam. Watching her discount the real pain she caused, especially to older residents who paid out of fear, is chilling. Then a viral moment happens almost by accident. Mrs. Peterson starts recording on her phone as Karen rants at David, and within 15 seconds the clip captures everything: a fake president collapsing into hysteria when confronted with legitimate authority, and the evidence of her own crimes. Mrs. Peterson uploads it with a deadpan caption: fake HOA president versus real one, epic meltdown. The clip spreads instantly, But one detail nags at me as the meeting breaks up. Someone in the back sat silent the whole time, taking notes and watching the financial exhibits with unusual interest. When David announces legal action and restitution plans, that observer slips out, phone in hand, making a quick call before vanishing. Purposeful, not casual. It suggests other players may have been following this case for reasons beyond neighborhood justice. By morning, my driveway has a local news van and a dozen missed calls. The 15-second clip of Karen's meltdown is now everywhere online. Watching how quickly that single moment exploded across feeds makes my engineer brain marvel at and fear the raw reach of viral content. The story that began as a private, painful betrayal of neighbors has become a public reckoning, and suddenly the whole town is watching extract money from vulnerable homeowners. Even when Officer Stone explained the legal risks, false reporting, impersonation, fraud, Karen treated each warning as proof of the conspiracy she'd imagined. Rather than accepting a chance to stop, she spun every fact into another allegation. The most chilling takeaway was that she truly believed her own constructions. Whether that was delusion or the psychological defense of someone who'd invested too much to admit failure, it made rational intervention hard. By the end of the meeting, the evidence had won out. David and the officers agreed there were grounds for criminal investigation and civil remedies. Karen kept shouting about illegal plots and corrupt officials, but the room had shifted. People who had been silenced for years now had documented proof, witnesses, and legitimate authority on their side. The trap David helped set had worked. She showed up to defend herself and expose the fraud for everyone to see. From a numbers standpoint, the results are staggering. While it hasn't hit the multi-million views that celebrity scandals or national politics usually get, the clip titled HOA Karen Loses Control at Community Meeting has pulled in over 267,000 views in just 48 hours. That's explosive organic growth for a raw neighborhood recording that launched without a single marketing dollar behind it. The extended compilation, Fake HOA President Meltdown, already sits at 98,000 views, while a local warning post titled, Exposed, Karen Mitchell Fraud Alert has been shared 347 times in our community alone. And honestly, that local engagement might be even more important than the bigger numbers, because these are people right here, the ones most at risk of being targeted by scams like this. What really cemented the story was Channel 7's coverage, which transformed this from internet entertainment into legitimate public education about fraud prevention. The reporter waiting outside my driveway made me uneasy. This isn't the kind of spotlight I ever wanted, but at the same time, it's hard not to feel a sense of relief. Wider coverage means fewer victims falling prey to authority scams. Your neighbor's viral video has grabbed attention across the region, the reporter explains as her cameraman sets up the lights. Can you comment on suburban fraud and what homeowners should look out for? To my surprise, the questions weren't sensational. They focused on protecting homeowners, verifying authority claims, demanding transparent documentation, and recognizing red flags in anyone demanding money without oversight. And here's the kicker. The video went viral not because of the backstory, but because of a 15-second moment. Karen, red-faced and shrieking, points and yells while David Chen calmly lays out official documents with composure that radiates real authority. It's the perfect clash of fake versus real, nonsense versus order. No context needed. It's a shareable, emotional snapshot of justice happening in real time. The irony? Even after becoming a viral laughingstock, Karen refuses to stop. That same afternoon, she marched onto my property with yet another briefcase stuffed with counterfeit paperwork, shouting about illegal viral videos and internet conspiracies against her so-called authority. I start filming her, part for my own protection, part because it's surreal watching someone double down after being exposed to hundreds of thousands of people. Karen. 267,000 people know you're not the HOA president, I tell her, hoping reality might finally sink in. Instead, she yells back about illegal people and illegal internet, insisting the entire online world is part of a conspiracy against her. It's disturbing, part fraud investigation, part live mental breakdown. But what fascinates me most is the ripple effect. In the wake of her exposure, other communities are coming forward with eerily similar stories: imposters targeting retirees, new housing developments, or neighborhoods with fuzzy HOA boundaries. The comment sections under these viral clips have become grassroots networks, connecting victims and mapping out patterns. It's proof that Karen may not be the only one, just the first to get caught on camera. The pattern that emerged painted a chilling picture, an entire category of suburban fraud that's been quietly thriving. Most victims felt too embarrassed to come forward, and law enforcement often dismissed the cases as civil disputes instead of crimes demanding prosecution. But local news dug deeper, uncovering the true scope of Karen's operation for the first time. Through bank records obtained legally, investigators discovered she had taken $1,200 from 8 households in Maplewood Heights, $800 from 6 homes in Maple Grove, and $400 from 4 families in Oak Hill, totaling $2,400 across 3 neighborhoods in just 6 months, and the money wasn't spent on luxuries. She reinvested it into her printing equipment, laminating supplies, fake seals, and even a custom nameplate reading, HOA President. She lived her lie so deeply that she surrounded herself with the illusion of authority, even when she was completely alone. What made her scheme dangerous was how carefully crafted it was. Karen studied real HOA bylaws, copied enforcement language, and designed believable violation categories. She targeted groups least likely to resist: elderly residents who trusted authority, first-time homeowners unfamiliar with HOA rules, and neighborhoods where the HOA structure was unclear. Her fake fines were strategic too, expensive enough to generate income, but not high enough to push people toward lawyers or official verification. In short, she weaponized human nature, our instinct to avoid conflict, protect property values, and be good neighbors, at its peak. Her scheme was pulling in $400 a month, a decent income stream during her unemployment. It wasn't sloppy desperation. It was systematic, calculated, and disturbingly effective. And just when I thought the story had reached its end, I found an envelope slipped under my door in the middle of the night. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photograph that made my blood run cold. Karen sitting in a coffee shop with 2 other people. Papers spread across the table. The angle, the clarity, this wasn't casual. It looked like surveillance. On the back, in bold black letters, one sentence was scrawled, "She's not working alone. Have you ever uncovered lies that ran so much deeper than you imagined?" Share your story in the comments, because Karen's secrets are unraveling fast. 2 weeks later, I'm still haunted by the photo. Who took it? Why send it to me? And how much more was going on that I didn't know? Then Detective Rodriguez called. His calm, professional tone made it clear. The case had grown bigger than before. The evidence supports theft and fraud charges, he explained, flipping through a case file that now seemed overwhelming in size. The DA wants to prosecute. This isn't small time anymore. Karen's crossed into serious criminal territory. When I asked about consequences, his response hit hard. The $2,400 she stole already pushed her past the felony threshold. Add in document forgery, identity fraud, and impersonating an authority figure, some of those charges carry federal weight. Even with a plea deal, Karen was looking at steep fines, community service, probation, and mandatory fraud prevention education. But if that photo was real, it meant this wasn't just Karen. It meant there's a bigger network out there, and she might only be the beginning. The structured and calculated way Karen ran her scheme, paired with the number of victims and her reliance on forged evidence, has escalated this beyond a neighborhood squabble. It's now a full-scale criminal case, one that opens the door to uncovering wider fraud networks. Legal proceedings begin with her attorney trying to secure a plea agreement, likely aiming to soften the outcome for a client who seems disconnected from reality and at risk of facing more charges if new connections surface. But despite professional guidance, Karen enters the prosecutor's office carrying yet another stack of fake documents, proving she's unwilling or unable to face the truth. Even with jail time looming, I'm reporting an illegal conspiracy against the rightful HOA president, she declares boldly, as if filing a complaint to some higher authority that will finally recognize her imaginary status. These people are unlawfully denying my federal authority. That sudden leap to federal authority shows just how far her delusion has spiraled. Instead of deflating under legal pressure, her belief in her fake title seems to be growing stronger. Her attorney, visibly drained, tries once more to pull her back. Karen, please, stop. We've gone over this. You are not the HOA president. We need to focus on minimizing the legal fallout from the charges already in play. But she won't hear it. Legal attorney. Illegal conspiracy. I have federal documentation. She snaps, accusing even her own lawyer of being part of the supposed plot against her. The bizarre scene unfolds as Karen begins, producing new forged evidence right there in front of prosecutors. The stack includes a so-called federal HOA oversight certificate, clearly printed on plain paper, fonts mismatched, with random jargon strung together. She hands over what she claims is a Supreme Court ruling, which turns out to be copy-pasted text from unrelated internet articles formatted to look official. Even her presidential authorization letter is riddled, with clumsy legalese lifted from generic templates. The prosecutor flips through the paperwork with professional restraint. Your client is continuing to create fraudulent documents during plea discussions, he remarks, keeping his tone steady despite watching someone actively commit more crimes in real time. Karen fires back instantly. Illegal fraud accusations. Illegal persecution of a legal federal authority. Her words highlight either a complete break from reality or a refusal so deep that she'd rather invite harsher punishment than admit defeat. At this point, court officials are documenting everything. What began as an effort to negotiate penalties has become a live demonstration of fraud in front of legal authorities. Then comes the reality check. The prosecutor outlines the weight of what she's facing. Theft of $2,400 is a felony carrying up to 3 years in jail, plus restitution to every victim. Forgery adds identity fraud charges, a federal matter when tied to impersonating government authority. And the impersonation itself adds separate misdemeanor charges, showing a deliberate pattern of deception. Financially, Karen owes $2,400 in restitution plus $1,800 in court and administrative costs, not counting legal fees, probation requirements, and the possibility of more penalties if her courtroom behavior continues. Her upcoming plea hearing is her final chance to accept responsibility and reduce the damage. But once in court, Karen shows the same defiance. Judge Harrison, speaking with measured patience born of long experience, carefully explains what rejecting the plea deal will mean. Karen interrupts again and again with cries of illegal conspiracy, until the judge warns her about contempt charges, penalties, That could mean immediate jail time on top of everything else. Ma'am, further outbursts will result in contempt of court, the judge says firmly, while officers in the room shift, prepared to act if necessary. Karen leans forward and hisses a stage whisper loud enough for everyone to hear. Illegal judge. Illegal threats against legal federal officials. Even at the edge of sentencing, with everything at stake, she clings to the fantasy of power she never truly held. Karen's acceptance of the plea deal only happens after her attorney finally convinces her that rejecting it would mean a trial, a guaranteed conviction, and harsher consequences, including possible jail time that could cut her off from her home and any remaining support system. The negotiated settlement lays out strict terms: 200 hours of community service at a legitimate HOA office, where she learned how real governance works and the clear line between authority and fraud. She's also required to complete fraud prevention education, therapy to address her obsession with false authority, 2 years of supervised probation with regular check-ins, and full financial restitution to every victim, structured with a payment plan to reflect her limited income. For the first time in months, Karen shows a hint of reality sinking in. A legal plea bargain. But legal advice says accept. That acknowledgement, following legal advice instead of clinging to her fantasy, marks her first recognition of true authority since this nightmare began. Leaving the courthouse, I thought justice had finally caught up with her. But then I overheard her lawyer speaking quietly into his phone. The local charges are resolved, but there are still questions about her ties to similar operations in other states. His tone carried the weight of something bigger, something darker, a network far beyond our neighborhood. 6 months later, life feels different. I sit on my farmhouse porch with a cup of coffee, reading an update from Bob Wilson. Karen completed probation, paid restitution, and even finished her community service. Court-ordered therapy helped her face the truth. Unemployment and divorce had triggered control issues that she channeled into fake authority. Now, ironically, she's working as an administrative assistant at a real estate office. A real job with real but limited authority, this time on the right side of the law. The ripple effect of her exposure has been surprisingly positive. Property values jumped by 8% after she was removed. Our HOA built a verification portal so residents can confirm board credentials instantly. The county set up a fraud reporting hotline, and even local print shops now verify documents before producing official-looking materials. What was once chaos has become education, prevention, and accountability. Judy joins me on the porch with her coffee. Remember when our biggest concern was choosing paint colors? She laughs. And she's right. Karen's saga turned neighbors into watchdogs. What felt like a disaster has become a legacy of stronger systems and sharper awareness. Over time, illegal even became our neighborhood's running joke, a reminder not to blindly trust authority claims. Agencies now use Karen's case as a teaching example, and law enforcement has training programs based on it. Our small HOA dispute reshaped fraud prevention across multiple communities. Mystery of that photograph was eventually solved. It came from another victim in a different state who had tracked Karen and her partners for months. In truth, Karen wasn't acting alone. She was part of a multi-state fraud ring that shared documents, strategies, and target lists. But her meltdown going viral triggered a chain reaction, arrests, prosecutions, and the dismantling of the entire network. Looking back, the greatest victory wasn't just Karen's downfall. It was the protection of countless families who will never fall for scams like hers. Her case became a cautionary tale, a strange kind of public service. So thank you, Karen. You turned your obsession with fake authority into a lesson that will outlive your fraud. It cost you $7,300 and a criminal record, but it saved entire communities from falling victim to schemes like yours. That's Justice in the suburbs where entitlement meets reality. If this story made you rethink neighborhood authority, hit the like button and subscribe to Listen HOA Stories for more unbelievable tales of suburban drama and justice. Until next time, remember, always verify before you trust.